Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for tuning in to my super chat. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I don't have $20 million in venture capital funding, so it means a lot to me that you're just, so kind, generous all the time, and you allow me to do the things I do and remain independent. So I don't have political action committees that funnel money from one PAC to another. I don't have $20 million in venture capital funding, but I do have you and my viewership, and I'm very, very proud and happy. To Eric, H526, Luke, St. Martin, the two best moderators in all of YouTube, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. What can I tell you other than the momentum is shifting towards President Trump. And you can look at the channels. I'm a relatively small channel, but look at everyone who, you could talk about everyone from Black Conservative Patriot to Steven Crowder to Styx to Tim Pool to, there's so many great, Amazing Lucas. You could look at Anthony Brian Logan. There are so many great channels, really amazing channels, who support President Trump or who just cannot stand the Democratic Party and are voting for President Trump. But there are, Kevin's Corner. There's a bunch of great ones. Liberal Hive Mind is an awesome one. There are so many great channels. There are a lot of great channels out there. Okay. And Mark Dice. You could just look at Ben Shapiro's channel. You could just look at all the channels that are supporting President Trump or opposing the Democratic Party. Go look at them. Go look at all of these channels. Brandon Tatum, Candace Owens. You can just look at pretty much everyone who is supporting President Trump. Whether you started off on the left like myself, I know Tim Pool did as well, and you then supported President Trump, or whether you were always a conservative and, of course, you support President Trump this election, just go and look at the energy. Go and look at the passion, the enthusiasm, the excitement. Go and look at the fact that people are laughing hysterically at the Democratic Party and at Botox B. I don't want to call him the exhumed body, but at this point right now, it's disrespectful. I used to say he was the Botox cadaver. I used to say that he looked like Jack Skellington, Nightmare Before Christmas. But there's energy, there's enthusiasm, there's hope. You're voting for something. I'm voting for President Trump because I want American soldiers home with their families. I want them removed from the places that Bush and President Obama sent them to forever. And President Trump ended the longest-running military conflict in U.S. history. He signed prison reform legislation. We had record low Black and Latino unemployment, record low nationwide unemployment before the pandemic, and they tried to blame Trump for the pandemic. It's not working. The majority of the country is doing well, even when I say well, comparatively well. We have every year, you had 56,000 Americans lose their lives 1 year under President Obama, okay, because of one type of virus. Now we have, obviously, something that's worse. Mike Sherman! Mike, thank you. Thank you, Mike Sherman. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Greatly, greatly, greatly appreciated, Mike. Thank you. Thank you very much. But you have like a whole bunch of, Roseanne Barr is absolutely fantastic. You have, and Mike Sherman, thank you very much. You have so many people who are voting for President Trump because they like his foreign policy. You now have historic agreements between UAE and Israel, between Serbia and Kosovo, between, he was the first president to step foot in North Korea, and begin détente between North and South Korea, a paradigm-changing moment. That doesn't mean instant peace. And then, of course, they say, well, they try to denigrate and mitigate and undermine and just erase any accomplishment. Because, for lack of a better word, they consume the haterade. They consume the vitriol, and they're so frustrated and miserable. They cannot even admit that he has accomplished more in 4 years. They can't even admit he accomplished anything. But they always talk about his personality and how he's a despot. Sorry, despots don't remove soldiers from military conflict, and despots don't sign prison reform legislation and pardon people. And despots don't. President Trump, he allocated more funding to historically black colleges and universities than any president ever. Nobody knows these things because media is so focused on his personality. Robert Mahaney. Robert, thank you. Robert, thank you very much. Robert, Mike. And so, thank you, Mike. Greatly appreciated. Thank you, Mike, very much. And Robert, thank you. Thank you, Robert Mahaney. And you had Biden today, and he's tanking his campaign. People, he's tanking his campaign. He's tanking his campaign. And it's just a matter of time before Madam Secretary swoops in. Hillary Clinton is the only chance they have, and that says a lot about the Democratic Party. Because they're going to get decimated if they go with Biden, which they won't, because he's literally tanking his campaign. You know that, by the way, you know that, I was thinking about it today. Ladies and gentlemen, tell everybody that Charlemagne the God interview. Someone tell Charlemagne the God that Biden was reading that insult off the teleprompter. Someone needs to tell Charlemagne the God that the insult that Biden's insult when he answered that question or answered questions pertaining to, why people should vote Biden over Trump, specifically African American and black voters. And when Biden said, because normally you don't expect anyone to just read off a teleprompter when it's a live interview. That doesn't usually happen. In fact, that never happens. A live interview? No. If it's a speech, fine. But an interview? Not really. And that's really unheard of. And when Charlemagne the God said to him, you know what, I forgot exactly what he asked, but then Biden said, and he was looking at that teleprompter. It was written out, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not looking at crop circles and like cloud formations and saying, oh, it's happening now. It's obvious. He does not have a campaign, and it's just a matter of time. I don't care if it's a day before November 3rd. They're capable of anything. Hillary Clinton is the only chance they have, and she runs the Democratic Party. It's like Boss Tweed and Tammany Hall, but when he told Charlemagne the God, if you have a problem voting for me or Trump, then you ain't black, the most racist and insulting thing you could ever say, and of course nobody cared because it was Biden. If Trump says something to somebody, he's saying it to all people. And his words are inciting and flaming, and fanning the flames of discontent and bigotry and xenophobia. But when it's Biden, and today he played Despacito, and he said, "Look, everyone," and his numbers among Hispanic and Latino voters went down even further, which is kind of funny. I was looking at, I don't speak Spanish. I know a tiny bit of Spanish. I can read it, or speak a tiny bit of Spanish. Very tiny. But they're calling him a clown, on all the Spanish channels, Spanish network channels. They're calling him a clown. They're like, the Democrats are such clowns. This is ridiculous. This is so funny. What is he doing? And guess what? That's another teleprompter type thing. They told him to do that. They're tanking his campaign deliberately. With Charlemagne the God, he deliberately did what he did. Harry, hello. Hello, Harry. Thank you, Harry. Thank you. Faith. Keeling, thank you. Faith Keeling. Thank you, Faith, very, very, very much. Thank you for always watching. Love the sweatshirt, USA, that's right. Faith, thank you. Mike and Faith, thank you. Harry, thank you. Robert, thank you. Faith, thank you very, very much. But that was on a teleprompter, ladies and gentlemen. A teleprompter. That was literally written down. The "you ain't" comment, the most 3 days before George Floyd was murdered. So then you know that Democrats are full of the most disingenuous nonsense when they claim to care about issues pertaining to justice, when 3 days before the George Floyd tragedy, he said, well, you ain't if you don't vote for me. And he was reading that from a teleprompter. He didn't write it. People who used to work for the Democratic Party or Clinton or President Obama, because he doesn't have staffers that he worked with. His entire staff, especially his campaign manager, used to work for either Hillary Clinton, the DNC, or President Obama. There are no grassroots. You think he knows the same? You think he has the same staff from '88 when he was kicked out? This thing's the biggest charade of all time, which is fine. It's, you know what? How it happens or when it happens, I don't care. It could be a meeting. But we'll get to really quickly. We're going to get to the Sedition and William Barr. But ladies and gentlemen, it's happening. Now it's happening. And Faith, thank you so very, very much. And Mike, thank you. It's happening ever so slowly. But when you have to look at sedition charges, overthrowing the government, when you're looking at that and you're saying, okay, you have a candidate that nobody believes is a real candidate. Nobody believes that Biden is a real candidate. Nobody. I keep telling you, and this is like, I've said this for about a year, this is the ain't no future in your frontin' election. This is the MC Breed election. And everybody knows that Biden is pretending. You don't just take out your phone today and when he's losing support among Latino and Hispanic voters who are going to give the presidency to Trump again, thank God. President Trump owes the Latino community and Hispanic community a great deal in his second term. And we had record low Black and Latino unemployment. But the Hispanic and Latino vote in Florida and throughout the country is going to give President Trump the victory. And you'll see a lot more African American and Black voters vote for Trump. You'll see a lot more Jewish voters vote. I can tell you, I know a lot more people who didn't like Trump and who are now definitely voting for Trump in my community, or the people that I know, Jewish people. So I can tell you that he's going to get a lot more support. Nobody gives a you-know-what about what the Washington Post or the New York Times or New York Magazine or the Daily Beast or CNN or MSNBC or MSDNC thinks of President Trump. They don't care what De Niro thinks or Barbara Streisand or Madonna or whatever. They don't care what Jimmy Kimmel. They don't care what Stephen Colbert think. They don't care what any of these people think. They're there for one purpose, to entertain and then be quiet. When Trevor Noah talks about issues pertaining to morality, and he doesn't bring up the fact that President Obama turned Libya into a failed state. That's a big problem. You can't preach about morality when you focus on one political side and you ignore the sins and horrible, atrocious decision making of your political side. The left is full of these entertainment televangelists, these Hollywood televangelists that have basically, instead of religion, they preach about politics. Chris H, thank you, Chris. Thank you very much. But you have now, the perfect scenario for Madam Secretary. New York Times, Barr told prosecutors to consider sedition charges for violence. The Guardian, Bill Barr reportedly suggested bringing sedition charges against protesters who against people who they ceased to be. The ACLU explained, you do not have a First Amendment right. You no longer have a First Amendment right to protest when the police say, please disperse. That's why when you get these scenes in Oregon and Washington and throughout the country with you have these standoffs between they're not protesters, but you have these standoffs between a whole bunch of people who are throwing things at police officers, who are yelling and they're saying, tase me, or spray me, or whatever, go ahead, do it, I don't care. It's at that point you are provoking, you're the one inciting and provoking law enforcement. Even if you feel that that your First Amendment right is being infringed upon, you can then sue the local or state or federal authorities. That's why when they're he removed protesters from Lafayette Square. It's yeah, those protesters in D.C., first of all, where's the camera footage? Secondly, there was a church set ablaze less than 24 hours earlier. But they're he removed the peaceful people from Lafayette Square. What a despot not seen since Attila the Hun have we seen this. It's yeah, there was no cell phone footage. I wonder why. And secondly, he has every right to do whatever he wants. And if indeed, because where are the lawsuits? Because, you had Nicholas Sandmann getting tens of millions, hopefully, from the Washington Post. He was what they did to him was illegal. If President Trump does anything illegal, or the city or the state or local police, go ahead and sue. But you don't just stand there and throw things and set buildings ablaze and cause property damage and say that you're fighting the system. You're giving votes to President Trump. And I explained today, all of these people, they never saw Donnie Brasco or they never read a history book and learned about how every movement, whether it's just and noble like the civil rights movement, you had noble and just and heroic organizations and people, and they were infiltrated by the federal government back then. And now you have organizations or people, I should say, who are not engaged in peaceful protest, who are engaged, let's just say, that have nothing to do with BLM, but they have their own agenda, and maybe they've latched on to the cause. And let's just say that these people show up at 1 or 2 and 3 in the morning, and they can't stand the United States government, and they've written about their disdain and their contempt for the United States government, and they've written about how everything needs to be torn down and rebuilt. And who do you think that about maybe, I don't know, 1 out of 100 are working for the federal government? 1 out of 200 of your friends, your best friends online All those people who take great pride in saying, oh yeah, there has to be anarchy and chaos and mayhem, and we're going to show the world, and this is our time to shine and to display our power and influence by destroying businesses and property and causing mayhem and chaos and throwing things at law enforcement and going up and yelling at law enforcement right to their face. It's like, you don't have the right to do that anymore. When the protest is over, you are now, they can arrest anyone at that point. And even the ACLU says that. The ACLU says, doesn't say go throw things or set buildings ablaze. They say, you know what, take it up in a lawsuit. If you feel that the police kicked you out of the streets earlier than you thought was necessary. But how many informants, how many agents working? The left is hilarious. They're like, oh, the FBI is so great, so wonderful. They're going after Trump. Yeah, they're going to go after you too. You think that they're not going to go after you? Why? Because Peter Strzok has a book? Peter Strzok has a book with the lovely Lisa Page. That's not the way it works. So he's going after the Sedition Act, and he has to prove that these people wanted to overthrow the government, which isn't difficult because their Facebook pages and their Instagrams and their Twitters, their Twitter profiles and everything associated with them, their text messages, because they confiscate the phones. What do you think? How many of those phones do you think William Barr has? How many of those cell phones and passwords to social media accounts? It takes 2 seconds for Twitter or Zuckerberg or Dorsey to give anything William Barr wants. These people are hilarious. They're like in their 20s. They don't know a life without the internet, and they don't know how compromised privacy is. They don't realize it's not just like what Edward Snowden and Assange and people who. It's not just what we learned in the past 10 years. If you don't know what it's like not to have the internet, then you kind of don't know how easy it is for all of these people like William Barr and John Durham and local law enforcement to just infiltrate a group, and they have all the goods. Any statement like this country needs to be, which is like all they talk about on the left. All they talk about. The country is so horrible. Oh my God, I have this. Sorry. There's this like prehistoric mosquito. The golden one! The golden moo-moo! Why aren't I 50 points ahead, you might ask? Yes! Yes! Oh my God. I apologize. I have to get this thing before it eat. I'm like wearing a long sleeve shirt. The golden moo-moo, thank you so very much. The golden moo-moo, thank you. Thank you. The golden moo-moo, thank you very, very, very much. Harry! Orange Grove 55, much love at you. Thank you. Thank you, Orange Grove 55. Thank you. The Golden Moo-Moo, thank you very much. One of the great names on this channel, thank you. The Golden Moo-Moo, thank you. But sedition, the issue is these people communicated, coordinated, talked about how much they dislike the government, talked about how much not only the disdain. They didn't only express disdain for President Trump, but they also almost certainly talked about how the country has to be, remade or revamped or, whatever it is. Oh my God, this thing is like amazing. I'm going to get this thing live on this channel. I'm going to get it for Sedition. They almost certainly have made not only incriminating statements, but you have informants and officials just based on history. You can look back in history. COINTELPRO is an example. And then you get the hilarious kind of like... COINTELPRO is a series of covert and illegal projects conducted by the United States Federal Bureau of Investigation aimed at surveilling, infiltrating, discrediting, and disrupting American political organizations. So now with technology, it's basically these people who are engaging in chaos and mayhem. They've given William Barr and the Justice Department and local and state officials everything they need in terms of incriminating evidence. It's not that difficult. Golden Moo, thank you. Michael J, hello, thank you. It's not that difficult. And so you gotta ask yourself, how many informants are there? Out of, let's just say there are 3,000 people in the United States of America. Less than that. Let's just say that there are 700 people. It's probably more, but let's just say there are 700 people who are on the streets in Oregon, in Washington, and states throughout the country. Minneapolis, 700 people who said, because the buildings didn't burn down themselves. So who committed arson? Let's just say 700 people. Probably more, but let's just say 700 people who were out in the middle of the night for, weeks and weeks on end. Battling law enforcement and, throwing things at buildings, and so say 700 people. Okay. And you say that there have already been, actually there has to be more than 700 because he's arrested already. 1,000? So 1,500 arrests. So, Operation Legend is the law enforcement operation that I talked about on this channel. Attorney General William Barr announces nearly 1,500 arrests so far under Operation Legend. Okay. 217 are facing federal charges. Okay. So, you have let's just say 217. Do you think of the 217 people facing federal charges? Do you think that there's perhaps an informant, or perhaps a federal agent that has infiltrated a Facebook group, or a circle of friends that got together and said, okay, you know what? Because if a 217 got federal charges and 1,500 have been arrested, they have friends. So there are thousands more. Let's say they have, 5, 6, 7, 8 friends, which they probably have a lot more people on their Facebook pages or whatever. So you're talking about 8 to 10,000 people easily within the circle of the 1,500. I mean, far more than that, but within the circle of the 1,500 that have been arrested, and let's say the 217 that have federal charges, let's say they know five close friends who they've told exactly what they're going to do, or who perhaps helped them or whatever. So you have 1,000 people, 1,000 to 10,000 people. And within that group, you have almost certainly a very small number of federal agents or informants or local and state informants or agents infiltrating social media groups or, informal political organizations. Not rocket science. Of course, I'm speaking based on U.S. history and not anything I know personally. Could be wrong. Could be that in the 60s and 70s, that was the only time that the federal government would infiltrate political organizations. Never happened again after that. That could be. I doubt it. So I think that he's going to get some people on sedition. I think he's probably going to get a lot of people on sedition. I don't see Achilles wear hello. I don't see this going well for the 217 people. Because also, if you have people flying, even CNN, like, well, it's true that they were flying, but there's no evidence that there was a wide-ranging operation or plot to engage in this chaos and mayhem. If you have people flying across the country, like most of these protesters, a lot of the people that caused property damage were from out of state. You have people going to locations, and then these people are getting money from the government also because of the pandemic. It's like, I don't think you're working if you're taking time to go across the state, and I don't think I don't think you're taking time from work or family to start causing mayhem and chaos. So it's like you have a whole bunch of young people who have just have ruined their lives for what purpose? For what purpose? It's like their closest friends would turn on them in 2 seconds. Here, there were two lawyers, young lawyers. Oh, the Molotov, that's right. This is CNN. How 2 promising lawyers found themselves facing life in prison for alleged Molotov cocktail attack during protests in New York. It's like, what's the point? What are you doing? What are you doing if you think that this is going to change anything? Laws have to be changed, and it was what happened to Eric Garner in 2014, and this is why Democrats are insidious. You had to change training and laws. You had to address the training and the laws. And I support law enforcement. I'm part of the 1199 Foundation that supports the families of fallen California Highway Patrol officers. That's the plaque I have in my other background studio. And it's a fantastic organization. Helps CHP, and the CHP does a lot. It's not just a law enforcement agency. It's like anywhere. If you're driving anywhere in the hundreds of miles of freeways and roads, they'll help you. If you get into a car accident, God forbid, whatever, they'll help you. And protect people from drunk drivers. So CHP does a lot. So I support law enforcement, but I also understand that there are certain people, there are certain attorneys, there are certain doctors, surgeons, dentists. Nobody says I'm not going to go to the doctor anymore because of malpractice. How many malpractice cases, or how many horrible stories do you hear about dentists taking advantage of their patients? You still go to the dentist, right? You don't let your teeth fall out. So you address police brutality with laws, and you say, okay, if a person's on the ground, you can't put your neck or your boot on them. I mean, they were Look at what happened to Daniel Shaver. Man, leaving his hotel room in Arizona. And that was like, that was an execution. Daniel Shaver. I mean, it's unbelievable. And the man who did that got off, which is unfortunate, but very unfortunate, because that was not like it just and Daniel Shaver was white, and so it happens to a great extent with everybody, but obviously more so with people of color. It is an issue that had to be addressed. You don't address the issue by destroying black-owned businesses or Latino-owned businesses or Asian-owned businesses. You focus on the training, and then you make a federal law saying if a person is on the ground, you cannot if they say I can't breathe, you cannot put your knee or your boot or your foot on their neck. You have to. That's what could have simply taken place in 2014, but of course, Democrats and President Obama didn't focus on that. Gee, I wonder why. Because when they're in the Oval Office, they preside over the largest expansion of domestic oil and gas production. So there goes fossil fuels and climate change. And of course, with Biden, with Tara Reid, they don't care about that. And with immigration, they presided over the deported more human beings than anyone else. So, but you talk about here how too promising. This is just unbelievable. So I want to see what happened to So they're out on bail. A surveillance camera is said to have recorded it all. A woman in a black T-shirt stepped out of a tan minivan. The lighting of a toilet paper fuse and the arc of a beer bottle filled with fuel is just thrown onto the dashboard of an empty police car. Oh my God! See, that's the thing. You don't know if it's really empty. You don't know. Like you think it might be empty. That's too late already. The act of vandalism. It wasn't just vandalism. That's like a lot more than that. In the early hours of May 30th, this is NPR, of course, is why two Brooklyn lawyers are fighting federal charges that could face as much as life in prison. You just can't do this. It's like, what do you gain from this? They're like, we're going to fight back. It's like, you are actually going to lose in the short run and the long run. Tuan, win! Still waiting for the golden move to levitate. I am as well. Tuan, win. Thank you. Tuan, win. Thank you so very, very much. I am as well. Every day, Tuan, win. Every day, Tuan. I'm looking, and I mean, it's like every single day. Every single day, you have Biden doing something. I mean, today he played Despacito. Tomorrow, who knows what he's going to do. I'm telling you, he's very close to just jumping into the reflecting pool without any clothes on and calling it a campaign. I have no clue when it's going to happen, but it's happening. Tuan, win. Thank you as always. Thank you as always, Tuan. Thank you. PH Authority. Hello. Tuan, thank you again. Thank you again. PH Authority. Hello. Hello. PH Authority, thank you so very, very much. Greatly appreciated. So you have these people they don't the left is hilarious and sad and frightening. They don't know how to convince people that their arguments are worthy of they don't know how they don't have arguments that resonate with the average American. Like the left used to have arguments that made sense, and they didn't always go about communicating their arguments in the best manner, but at least it made sense. You could talk about obviously the civil rights movement in the 60s. Obviously that was noble. And the arguments were obviously, it was an example of good versus evil. Good versus bad. But now you have a generation of young people that are like, well, we're just the same, heroes. Like, no, you're not. It's a completely different world. And there are definitely still injustices, but it's a completely different world. And you have the great Jim Brown, who was part of the group of athletes that worked alongside Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and all the civil rights leaders. And he's stated he's supporting President Trump, and he's against several elements of what's going on today. I don't want to get too in depth or in detail, but you have people who are we're going to fight this injustice that's going. Well, the injustice took place in 2014 also with Eric Garner. Where were the socially conscious athletes? Oh, that's right. Well, nobody cared. Unfortunately, people cared, but people did care, because I cared a great deal, and I still care. What happened to Eric Garner in 2014 was horrendous. He was murdered. And it wasn't like people say, oh, well, he was overweight. No. It wasn't that. If you can't breathe, you can't breathe. And if you say you can't breathe, the person has to, especially law enforcement, has to allow you to breathe. You're not going to suddenly just, levitate up or, start flying from the ground. You're already subdued. There's no point. But athletes didn't care. Maybe they wore shirts for a moment, but you didn't see and then Colin Kaepernick, his protest started under President Obama's administration, but Nancy Pelosi didn't say anything. Chuck Schumer didn't say anything, because it wasn't politically. This is why Democrats are so insidious and media is so just duplicitous. Nobody made an issue about it because it was under President Obama's administration. Same with Standing Rock. PH Authority, thank you. Thank you, PH Authority. Robber Baron! Your vastness of great wisdom is unrelenting. Robber Baron! Thank you, Robber Baron, thank you. Greatly appreciated. Thank you for the kind words, Robber Baron, and thank you for always watching. Robber Baron, thank you very, very, very much. Greatly appreciated. Greatly appreciated. But it's the left is suddenly everyone grows up this big conscience, oh my God, you see what Trump is doing with the cages? It's yeah, that is bad. And he pretty close to when the uproar took place said, okay, we're going to stop this policy. They forget that. We're going to stop this. And President Obama, by the way, had a worse policy that the Senate panel, and then they get around it by saying, well, it wasn't a policy, it was a mistake. It's no, worse happened. Even worse happened. And nobody knows where those young people, we don't know what happened. I'm speaking in roundabout terms, but it was a Senate panel. I don't even want to talk about it because it's probably nowadays against the algorithm. But it was a Senate panel that New York Magazine documented it, and things happened that were worse under President Obama. And then they focus on Stephen Miller. Oh my God! And then they have 10 different phrases for racism. of nationalism and supremacy, and then enabling, and then there's what was it? Fragility. That's a good one. That's a great. There's 10 different things. It used to be just racism, like 10 different descriptions now. And then it's like, and we can go on forever. The left, any cause that Hollywood adopts, any cause, it doesn't work out. Hollywood ensures that, and the left itself, really, this like they're so incompetent, it's unbelievable. There's like so many different tribes and factions, and they all can't stand one another. I know. I used to be the biggest Bernie Sanders booster on the internet, according to the Huffington Post. Robert Barron, thank you. I know you're never good enough. It's never good enough. There's always somebody, like, at the gym, there's always somebody who's stronger than you. Or like if it's like boxing or MMA, there's always going to be somebody who's either better or just as good or whatever. There's always somebody to the left of you, or maybe like not to the left of you, but to the right of you, but still on the left. And you're always going like you're either getting insulted by liberals or by progressives, and then the progressives are like cut into like 5 or 6 different categories, and it's just never good enough. It's never good enough. They always turn on each other. Like the left is like, people wake up every day, especially on the progressive side, on the left-leaning side, and also even the socialist, anarchist, whatever. They wake up every day, and they go into their accounts, Devin Nunes's proctologist, his neighbor's chiropractor. They have all these fantastic names. They're really, really fun names. Newt Gingrich's, birdcage. And they just come up with reasons to dislike other Democrats, everyone else on the left, people who are just not in tune with how moral and righteous they are. And then every day on Twitter, like Twitter is the worst thing for humanity, but every day it is dissolving and decimating. They're like, the left is like dissolving into a solution of Twitter madness, like slowly dissolving. And when Trump wins again, oh my God, it's going to be so unhealthy. And we'll document this on this channel and H.A. Goodman's other channel. But the meltdown is going to be so unhealthy and interesting. I would say amusing, but it's probably going to be very frightening. And we'll document everything on this channel and H.A. Goodman's other channel and H.A. Goodman's cooking channel. And I might even, do a gardening channel. We'll do a lot of things. But you have this, like, instead of addressing the specific grievance, they're like, we're going to just show how powerful we are and how influential we are. And then there's eventually $1.4 billion in property loss. And how many black-owned businesses have been destroyed? And Latino and Hispanic-owned businesses have been destroyed. How many? How many Asian-owned businesses have been destroyed? I mean, the true racists are on the Democratic side, not Trump or Trump supporters. They're the ones who don't want buildings set ablaze. And then when you have CNN, fire but peaceful, it's like, we know what you're doing. We know what you're doing. You don't want to admit the massive, enormous, horrendous property damage and loss throughout the country. So you always try to pretend that really it's Trump trying to, Trump is just trying to, take things out of proportion, make things what they aren't. It's really Trump's fault. He's fanning the flames while actual flames are in the background. And it's like their entire lives are dedicated to, well, so what? Not that big of a deal. Well, we had record low unemployment nationwide. So what? Not that big of a deal. He signed the First Step Act. So that's pretty good. So, not that big of a deal. Well, it is for people who are, that's actually addressing the structural inequality and injustice in the criminal justice system. It's like the left is like oblivious. He is the first. He has allocated more funding to historically black colleges and universities than any president ever, including President Obama. Well, so what? That's not a Trump. It's not really Trump. It's like, well, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Yes, it is. So what? He signed a deal, peace deal. He helped foster a monumental deal with Serbia and Kosovo. So what? He helped foster this historic landmark deal between Israel and the UAE and Bahrain. So what? I mean, they're miserable, the left. He is, he signed an executive order to combat anti-Semitism, where you can't make outlandish statements about Israel and expect to get federal funding. So what? In fact, we're against that. Yeah, I bet you are. I know exactly why you're against that. The anti-Semitism is coming from the left, primarily. Of course, there's some coming from the right, but like this is the right, the alt right is like not nobody. They have zero influence in American culture, in academia or in politics. Zero influence, even online. It's like a tiny group within the political sphere, run by people making outlandish comments, like some Democrats in Congress. But, and I wrote an article about that in an op-ed in the Jerusalem Post, why Democrats embrace anti-Semitism and anti-Israel bias. I wrote another article also in the Federalist regarding that. But you have everything good he does. He signed an executive order to address prescription drug prices. So what? Pilgrim Media. I have a strong feeling we will be victorious, sir. Yes. Pilgrim Media, I agree with you. Maxwell Smart. Love the name, Maxwell Smart. Are there any debates confirmed to take place? Yes, September 29th is the first one. September 29th, Maxwell Smart, thank you. September 29th is the first one. And if they go with Biden, then they're tanking their chances even further. And they're just, eventually they're going to go with Clinton. We're just waiting. I love this. The Hill, D-Day for Trump. Yeah, right. September 29th. It's like they really, if you were to ask them, well, why would anyone vote for Biden? You see, he's up by 10. Why? What is it about Biden? The fact that his name is not Trump? Because everything he does every single day is a frightening and hilarious and amusing and pathetic tragedy. He's not even trying. And the article is written by a former chair of the Democratic Party of Virginia. This is in the Hill. September 29th is the first debate, and then there's 2 in October. So, I don't know when, but Madam Secretary is going to save save the day. The first one is in Cleveland. Cleveland, come on down to Cleveland town, everyone. That's the best song ever. That is the best song ever. But Maxwell Smart, September 29th. But you have, ladies and gentlemen, like they're so petulant. They're so petulant, it's unbelievable. Like anything good that takes place is, so what? It's not that big of a deal. Like their entire lives are predicated upon mitigating anything good that happens under President Trump's administration. It's like they live only to denigrate Trump. And it's interesting too, like it's like a psychological, like you have these, even the psychologists need help. Even the psychiatrists and the psychologists that need help, they need their own psychologists and psychiatrists on the left, because you're like you always get these dumb articles like 350 former psychologists, or 350 mental health professionals, including Yale psychologists, say that Trump is a danger to the planet, and his erratic behavior is a threat to the union. And it's like, yeah, you don't like his policies, or you don't like his personality. Which one is it? You don't like his personality, so you say that he has lost his marbles because of that. Meanwhile, he's filling up, still filling up as much as he can stadiums or arenas or venues. He gets people to laugh. He's charismatic. That's why, Helmut Norpoth, the professor at Stony Brook, he predicted last election. He said that President Trump's going to win by a large margin because of enthusiasm. And then the Professor Lichtman, he also predicted the last election, says, well, Trump's going to lose. But one of his arguments is that he doesn't have charisma. It's like, are you kidding? He definitely does have charisma. Pilgrim Media, thank you. Maxwell Smart, thank you. Janet! The Molotov throwers in New York had their bail revoked a week later. Janet, thank you. Yeah. Okay. So it's interesting. I have to find out what's taking place. I mean, these are people who tarnish their entire future. For what? It didn't help anyone. Janet Hurley, thank you very much. Janet, thank you. I'm going to do some more research on that. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know about that. Janet, thank you. But you have this is one of the many reasons they'll lose. They're going to lose on November 3rd. And it's going to be the way they're heading towards, because they truly think Trump is done, because they believe the polls were wrong last year. The polls were wrong, and they still go back to the polls. And all the pundits, and I was quoted NPR, I don't know if I told you, NPR quoted me, and I said Trump would win. I said Clinton would lose. And 538 within that article, within the same paragraph, said that Trump wouldn't be GOP nominee. I think he was a nominee. I think he won the nomination. And but you have well, he's up nationally. Why? Well, the polls say, and the polls are scientific. No, they're not. They're the opposite of science. You have to science is based upon a great deal of certainty. Of course, there's a great deal of uncertainty in science. Perhaps if you ask a scientist, they'll say, well, it's actually mostly uncertain. But there are principles, there are laws of physics. Or the polls are based on the basis for the polls is the theory behind statistics pertaining to polls is, these polls account for bias. These polls are randomly done. There was a poll conducted by a university that said Clinton was up by like 16 points before she lost. And 16 points nationally would have meant, easy wins in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Kathy DePoy! Kathy DePoy, thank you, Kathy. Thank you again. Kathy, as always, be here. November 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, all throughout November, all throughout October. They're heading towards an iceberg. We're heading towards like the most euphoric victory of all time. It's pretty amazing. Kathy DePoy, thank you, Kathy. As always, thank you so very, very, very much, Kathy. Thank you. Pilgrim Media! My brother in San Francisco asked me, yeah, definitely don't do that. I'm in Tampa. Pilgrim Media, be careful and definitely don't. Only if your life is threatened. But if you see, I don't know what your situation is, but definitely don't get yourself involved in like any type of vigilante or any type of it's true. You should stand your ground when. Whatever. Even if you have to retreat, it's better than potentially, going to prison because you accidentally did something that you shouldn't have done, or you did something you shouldn't have done because other people were. It depends on your situation, but it only depends on if your life is at risk. Don't take anything into your hands. Let law enforcement, if you can, do their job. The only time you use the Second Amendment is if your life is if your life or your family's life is at risk. Otherwise, stay safe. Don't do that to any rioters or anything. But Pilgrim Media, be safe. Try to stay away as much as you can from any chaos and mayhem. Like, remove yourself from that situation, Pilgrim Media. Remove yourself. Because it's almost that they definitely want to, kind of suck you in to this world that they've created. Don't take the bait. Definitely don't do that. I agree with your brother on that. Pilgrim Media. Because you know what? Your future and your happiness is at stake here. You got to enjoy November 3rd. You got to enjoy the next 4 years. We're going to have an amazing 4 years, Pilgrim Media. I want you to enjoy that without having to deal with the legal and moral repercussions of anything that they try to, suck you into. Pilgrim Media, thank you. Cheated no more. Ultra-liberal psychologists are not fit to help anyone. Exactly. Well, you know what? It's yes, Eric, I did. Cheated no more. It's interesting because when was the last time someone conducted a psychological evaluation of President Obama, who just simply said, yeah, you know what? Libya was my worst mistake. Oopsie. What kind of human being is that? Like, what is your worst mistake in life, ladies and gentlemen? I can tell you it's not destroying a country. I can tell you it's not turning a country into a failed state. So the despot that was there, that Clinton, was laughing, we came, we saw, and ha. That wasn't a failed state. That country was functioning. And it was, going through a lot of problems, but it wasn't a failed state. President Obama and NATO turned it into a failed state. That's why the Democrats love, and the neocons. See, it's funny. You have the left saying, "Oh, the neocons lie." It's like no. The Lincoln Project are literally the Bush neocons, and they're voting Democrat. So Bernie Sanders is voting alongside the Lincoln Project. Bill Kristol and Max Boot are voting Democrat. They're the ones who were the Bush era people who pushed for never-ending wars. And they're voting alongside Bernie Sanders and AOC. That should tell you about the left. That should tell you everything you need to know about the dysfunctional nature of today's left. You have like liberals who are so proud. You see what these Republicans are saying? They're not really, they're Lincoln Project people. They were kicked out of the Republican Party because Trump couldn't stand them. And they couldn't stand Trump. So they left. And they found a nice, very, very comfortable home in the Democratic Party. But you have liberals saying, even the Republicans don't like Trump. It's like, yeah, there's a very tiny percentage of the Republican Party that's been kicked out because nobody wants them. But, Kathy, thank you. But yeah, you have, cheated no more. Thank you. Pilgrim Media, stay safe. Be careful. Definitely just focus on your happiness and don't let anyone pull you down. Even if they try to provoke you. Don't fall into any trap. That's why I tell President Trump, you're up by 10 points, Trump, with 5 minutes in the game left. You don't have to go. You don't have to run any risky plays. You're up by 10 points. Just do what got you there. That's all. You're up by 10 with 5 minutes left. Exactly, Sam. AOC was funded by Trump, probably. Patscape! I suffer from traumatic brain injury. I do not have an account of my own that I control, so once in a while I get access here. Here you go. Thanks for all you do. God bless you. Patscape, thank you very, very much. And thank you for everything that you've done for this country. And God bless you for your service. And, the United States, America owes you a great deal, and everybody all the veterans and all the people who have suffered and sacrificed. And, God bless you and everything that you've done. And I really appreciate it. And thank you very much. Patscape, we're going to have a good time November. We're going to have a really good time November. A really good time. And I don't want to there's no schadenfreude here, but the left did it to themselves. The meltdown. Patscape. Kathy DePoy. The meltdown. Cheated no more in Pilgrim Media. The meltdown on the left is going to be so profound. Pilgrim Media! Mr. Goodman, I'm behaving myself. Don't worry. God bless you. Just, always focus on happiness. And this is a beautiful time to be alive and free. It's a beautiful time because you have, and Patscape, thank you so very much. You have Hollywood, De Niro, Barbara Streisand, everybody, directors and producers and all the, the epicenter of immorality and, just vicious, atrocious behavior. You have Hollywood going after Trump. And they're saying that he's a bad person. These are like the worst people on the planet. Producers and directors and, actors and just people. You talk about how they treat one another, the stories that you hear in Hollywood. It's unbelievable. It's like the last community or industry that would ever be able to lecture anyone on ethics or morality. But you have Hollywood. You have corrupt intel officials like Strzok and McCabe and Clapper and Brennan and Kleinsmith, who was just indicted. And then you have the Democratic Party that cheated Bernie Sanders. And they blamed Russia. Then you have the DNC, and you have everyone on Twitter and Facebook and pretty much every tech company. And everyone is going up against Trump. And he's going to go and win. It's a pretty good time to, Daniel, yes, I definitely will have many live streams on November 3rd. I'll have a very, very long one in the evening and just many live streams. If you want to be part of a newsletter, it's contactgoodman78@gmail.com. So just email me there and you'll be part of a newsletter. My website is going to come up very soon. It eventually will come up. It's going to be awesome. But it's a good time to be live. Patscape, God bless you and thank you. And be here, please, November 3rd. All throughout November. Because you got to understand I'm going to start every broadcast, every video with, ladies and gentlemen, Democrats, you lost twice. You can't, if you have a rivalry game, okay, in the chat, if you're a college football fan or you're a pro football fan or you're a baseball fan, give me your rival. Give in the chat right now. Give me your rival. Is it Alabama? Is it Auburn? Is it Florida? Florida State? Miami, Florida State? Is it SC, UCLA? Is it Oklahoma, Texas? Is it Oklahoma, Nebraska? Is it Yankees, Red Sox, Lakers, Celtics? Who are your rivals? Give me your rivals. Give me your rivals right now. I want to know who your rivals are. Is it Celtic Ranger for soccer or football? Who is who are your rivals? Okay, so LA versus San Francisco. Cowboys, okay. That's right. Is it Cowboys, Redskins, New York, Dallas? So it's like imagine Chiefs fans to Raiders. Okay, Michael. So Dodgers are your rivals. So Nebraska. Okay, so imagine if you lost to your rival. It's going to be beautiful for sure. Imagine if you lost, New York, Boston, exactly. Imagine if you lost to your rival. Imagine if you lost to your rival. 2 Super Bowls, 2 World Series, 2, imagine in college football, you were 1 game away from the national championship 2 years in a row, and you lost to your rival, and you couldn't get to the championship game, or you faced your rival in the championship game 2 years in a row, and you lost with a last-second touchdown 2 years in a row. And that's what Trump's going to do to them. 2 elections in a row. That is a tough thing to deal with, especially when you're younger. And they'll lose a generation this year. I mean, let's put it this way, they could rebound. They will be able to rebound quicker with Clinton, because Clinton is going to be eventually on that debate, either on that debate stage or sometime before the ballot. She'll be on that ballot. But imagine if you lose 2 years in a row. You lose 2 years in a row, two elections in a row. You don't have any bragging rights. You lose bragging rights. They won't be able to talk about, oh, well, Trump supporters this, and Trump this. He's a threat. He's a danger. He's going to ruin the republic. There goes our democracy. These are all This is all hyperbolic nonsense. This is all nonsense and hyperbole, and it's lame. You lost twice. I mean, I am looking at this, and I told you it'll be Hillary Clinton eventually. I mean, at the end of the day, Trump goes 8 years. It's still part of the H.A. Goodman prophecy, but still, I'm joking. But, my prediction is, the most important part for me is Clinton. The most important part for the country, and also for me, is that President Trump goes 8 years. So, Trump's going to go 8 years easily with Biden. With Clinton, it'll get close, and she will eventually be there on the ballot. This is not happening. Everyone is actually using the phrase like matrix or computer program because they can't believe it's real. Nobody can believe this is real. It's not happening. They definitely have something up their sleeve. Pilgrim Media. When a mammal is cornered, what happens? Well, I don't exactly know what that question is about, but the best thing to do is remove yourself. The best thing for that mammal is to remove itself from that situation somehow, or maybe climb up the whatever corner that it's being cornered in. But ladies and gentlemen, you look and they're going to lose twice. I don't think they really understand. Like, they don't understand what's going to happen to their political party. And it's going to be really sad and amusing / hilarious, but also frightening, because all the different factions and tribes and segments of the left they're going to break off. Like, you're going to see people are going to be breaking off. Democrats don't realize what they're going to get into. And the biggest threat to the Democratic Party is not Trump, it's the left. It's actually Democratic voters. Democrats are barely held together. Like, you're talking about a political side that is it's like holding together a car with Scotch tape. Like, they're barely held together. Barely. You have the left that say, Medicare for all, okay? The Democrats will never allow that to happen. They don't want that to happen. They just want to give the allure of it one day taking place. See, a great many progressives are stuck within this very unhappy world where they can't join Trump, they can't like Trump, they can't even say anything good about him, but at the same time, they really do despise the Democratic Party more than Trump, because it's the Democrats. They use the phrase like, well, the Democrats won't give us Medicare for all. It's like, Democrats aren't going to give you anything. The Democrats despise you. The Democrats look at progressives as like the unfortunate repercussion of left-leaning ideology. Like, they're like, oh, we have to deal with these people. And then they have a couple of members of Congress that Nancy Pelosi says it's like couldn't fill a phone booth or whatever she says. And the notion, ladies and gentlemen, is that, well, the left really runs the Democratic Party. It doesn't. The Democrats are run by the center, the Nancy Pelosi, I'm with her people, Hillary Clinton, obviously, and Bill Clinton. They're the Boss Tweed, politicians of today's Tammany Hall. The left doesn't run the Democratic Party. The Democrats are pretending. They pretend. That's why when it was Andrew Cuomo versus who was the actress? And she was like running on Medicare for all, and this is New York. She was running on Medicare for all, and she talked a lot about socialism. She got decimated by Cuomo. Like, it wasn't even close at all. Not at all. And so you have these, and then like every victory that they have, it's like, oh, this progressive one. It's like, okay. But that's not what the Democrats are about. Democrats are a political party where they're marginally more liberal than establishment Republicans on issues like climate change. They're actually far more militant than President Trump, which is one of the great things about voting for President Trump, that you get I get everything I ever wanted from Bernie Sanders from Trump. And I get somebody who fights. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much. I'm kind of running out of steam here. Let's just really quickly, let's find out what's going on. I mean, do we have to talk about Biden? I mean, my prediction is taking place. It's just slowly but surely. Then there's a Ukraine probe that's coming out. That'll come out eventually next week. That's going to be interesting. I mean, he won't be able to, very likely that's going to hurt his campaign. Nice. Johnny Carson poked fun at Biden plagiarism claims in the 80s. Nice. Even Johnny Carson laughs at Biden. That's so great. Wow. The king of late night. Think you can. All right, everybody. Thank you so very much. To my super chat. Michael, hello. To my super chat. And Purple Tree, thank you. To my super chat, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Luke St. Martin, Eric H526, thanks for being the best moderators in all of YouTube. Be here 9 p.m. Pacific tomorrow, people. And of course, I have an upload. Victor! Hillary is getting stamina. Use up Biden. Victor, thank you. Thank you, Victor. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be here 9 p.m. Pacific tomorrow. Be here. Best late evening live stream in all of YouTube. And, of course, I have my upload. That's in the day, generally around 1 or 2 p.m. Pacific time, so check the channel. But be here definitely 9 p.m. Pacific. I'll see you there tomorrow. I'll see you here tomorrow. And thanks, everybody. God bless. Have a great evening.